It all started with a smile, one of those that doesn't come from respect, but from judgment. The black woman just wanted to take her seat. She had her ticket. She had her place. She had every right. But for the flight attendant, that wasn't enough. That seat? There must be some mistake. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult her. She didn't push. But she did something worse. She made her feel like she didn't belong. And just when it seemed like no one would say a word, the little boy beside her looked up and said 5 words. 5. That sparked a storm at 30,000 feet. Have you ever been looked at like you didn't belong? Have you ever felt invisible in a place you paid to be? Then stay with us, because what happened on that plane wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a brutal reflection of a truth many choose to ignore. And in the end, you'll decide who should have been removed from that flight, her or the one who judged her by the color of her skin. Subscribe now, because this story will shake you. And when it ends, staying silent won't be an option. The flight was nearly full. The lines moved like tired ants, slow, clumsy, pushed by urgency and frustration. The air, thick with cheap disinfectant, felt more like a warning than a welcome. The metallic clatter of suitcase wheels echoed down the aisle. And in the middle of it all, Amara, 38 years old, deep brown skin, eyes like burning coal, calm but intense. She wore dark jeans, a plain beige blouse, carried a small suitcase, and held her 7-year-old son by the hand. A little boy in a dinosaur t-shirt, Velcro shoes, and the curious gaze of someone who still believes the world is fair. They walked past the first-class seats quietly, not looking at anyone. They moved with that careful mix of dignity and discretion that many know all too well. The kind you wear when you know you're being watched, even if no one says a word. And then, like lightning you don't see but feel, the voice. "Excuse me, are you sure that's your seat?" A phrase dressed up in politeness, but the blade beneath was clear. Amara stopped. She turned slowly, like someone who already knew that tone. The tone that doesn't ask, it suspects. The tone that doesn't inform, it accuses. The flight attendant had a tight bun, flawless makeup, and a smile that looked rehearsed in the mirror. But the raised eyebrow said more than her lips ever could. Amara calmly held out her boarding pass. She didn't speak. She simply extended her hand. 3A. First class. Window. The flight attendant looked at the ticket, then at her. And that pause, that heavy pause, filled with contempt, wrapped in courtesy, was felt by the entire cabin. And then she said it. "There must be a mistake. That class isn't available for visitors." Visitors. As if they were intruding in a museum, as if their presence was an interruption to the natural order, as if existing in that space was a visual offense. Silence fell like a curtain. No one said a word, but everyone was listening. Amara didn't react right away. She slowly lowered the pass, took a deep breath, and looked down at her son. And it was him. With his wide eyes, not fully understanding, but feeling the injustice, who broke the silence. "My mom designed this plane." The words hung in the air like thunder before it strikes. Not loud, not defiant, just honest, pure. And that sentence cracked the mask. The flight attendant blinked. A passenger tilted his head. A woman in the back whispered, "What did he say?" And someone else pulled out their phone, just in case. And then the inevitable. That tension no one speaks of, that unspoken judgment, that ever-present suspicion. It erupted, not with shouting, not with fights, but with a truth so powerful no uniform could hide it. Because the turbulence that was coming wasn't from the sky. It was from prejudice, and it was about to be exposed at 30,000 feet. If you've made it this far, comment the word respect, so the world knows you're on the right side of history. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Every story here has a voice, and yours deserves to be heard too. The flight attendant froze. Her expression, once confident and poised, was now a map of confusion, as if someone had switched off the lights in her mind for a moment. The boy's words still lingered in the air, echoing with a weight that couldn't be ignored. "My mom designed this plane." And that was when everything changed. The passengers began to look, not out of curiosity, but with genuine interest, like people who suddenly realized they were witnessing something far bigger. A businessman in seat 2B muttered, "She designed this plane?" A young woman quietly turned on her phone's camera, and a kid in the back whispered to his mom, "Is she famous?" But Amara didn't say a word. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cause a scene. She simply stood there, with a calm so profound it felt impossible. But if you looked closely, her eyes told a different story. Built-up pain, contained rage, and a silent decision, because that look belonged to someone who had been rejected 1,000 times for what she represented, and who was finally done pretending it didn't hurt. Her son looked up at her, innocence still intact. He didn't understand structural racism. He didn't know terms like implicit bias or systemic discrimination. He only knew one thing: his mom was brilliant, and they were treating her like she was nothing. The flight attendant swallowed hard, tried to recover. "I'm sorry, maybe it was just a misunderstanding." But her voice no longer held authority. The silence of the plane had overthrown it. And this is where everything took on a new dimension, because Amara wasn't just a passenger. She was a senior aerospace engineer at one of the world's leading companies. And that aircraft model, that famously efficient and ergonomic cabin layout, bore her signature on the blueprints, her name, her mind, her hands, and now. This woman, standing in simple clothes, with a child by her side, this same woman who had just been treated like an imposter in first class, was, quite literally, the architect of the very space everyone was sitting in. A woman in economy class whispered, "She really designed it?" Someone else replied, "Looks like it." And then, as it often happens, the wind shifted. The eyes that once judged now respected. The murmurs turned into whispers of admiration, and the power that had been stolen with a single gesture slowly returned to its rightful owner. And all of it, every single moment, started with one sentence from a child. The cabin was no longer just a place for travel. It had become a stage, and every person on board was part of the jury. The supervisor was called in urgently. A middle-aged woman, professional, the kind used to resolving conflict without ever raising her voice. With firm steps, she approached Amara and her son. She asked for the tickets. A pause, the hum of the engines in the background. And then the confirmation. "Amara Diop, first class." Verified. The supervisor turned to the flight attendant with a look that needed no words, the kind of look you give when someone's crossed a line and knows it. The flight attendant tried to salvage what was left of her authority. "I just wanted to make sure. There were a lot of mix-ups today, and I thought maybe—" But her voice no longer mattered, because while she spoke, the rest of the cabin had already made up their minds. Someone had uploaded the video. Yes, the video. Amara being questioned. Her son calmly speaking a truth that disarmed everyone. "My mom designed this plane." And the reaction, the tension, the fake smile melting like wax under the sun of truth. And the video already had thousands of views. It was more than a confrontation. It was a scene echoing millions of similar stories. A black woman being pushed aside, not by mistake, but by prejudice dressed up as politeness. Because sometimes racism doesn't shout. Sometimes it smiles. It asks questions with a sweet tone and accuses with a single raised eyebrow. The flight attendant muttered, "I'm really sorry." But there was no response. Amara didn't need to respond. She didn't need to defend her place. The world, at least the world on that flight, had already seen it all. And as she walked back to her seat, her son reached for her hand. She smiled at him. And that was the only real smile in that entire cabin. Because while one woman lost her mask, another reclaimed her dignity. Back on solid ground, but with the internet on fire. The video crossed digital oceans faster than any plane ever could. 2 million views in 24 hours. And climbing. The clip was short, but devastatingly powerful. A composed black mother, a child with a voice like truth, and a flight attendant who could no longer hide behind a uniform. The hashtag number sign designed by Amara took off like a rocket. Celebrities shared it. Engineers, mothers, activists, all saying the same thing. "It's about time," the airline responded. They issued a statement, cold, generic. The company does not tolerate any form of discrimination. But it was too late. The narrative had already taken flight, and the people had made up their minds. She wasn't mistaken. She was humiliated, and she deserved justice. Hours later, a second announcement dropped. The flight attendant had been terminated. No defense, no press conference, no "I'm sorry" strong enough to erase what had been done. Meanwhile, Amara received a different kind of call. But this one wasn't an apology. It was an offer, a new position, a keynote invitation, a contract, a collaboration. Now everyone wanted to work with her, because now everyone knew who she was. But more importantly, they knew one thing. She wasn't going to stay silent anymore. And as the world lit up with conversations about justice, equality, and representation, Amara simply looked at her son and said, "Thank you for not being afraid to speak the truth." Because sometimes just one sentence, spoken at the right moment, can break centuries of silence. And on that flight, 30,000 feet above the earth, it wasn't just a plane that took off. It was respect. It wasn't just a sentence. It was an earthquake in the sky. A truth so simple, it shattered a lie that had been protected for far too long. That day, it wasn't just a seat being defended. It was a legacy, a story that many tried to silence. But a 7-year-old boy with a brave heart shouted it without even raising his voice. Because talent has no color, and prejudice can't fly as high as truth. So the next time someone makes you feel like you don't belong, like your place isn't yours to claim, remember Amara and that little boy who didn't ask permission to speak the truth. He just said it and let the world hear. Did this story hit you? Show it. Comment below. Have you ever been made to feel like you didn't belong? Share this video and don't forget to subscribe, because there are still so many stories like this one, waiting to take off.